Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. In Yemen, more embassies are closing. Yesterday, it was the United States and British ones. Today, French, German, and Japanese embassies are closed. All are due to worries about an attack by al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, President Obama is back from Hawaii, assuring Americans that they are safe and that he's got a plan for protecting them. Joining me to discuss all of this is CBS News Pentagon correspondent David Martin and Politico senior writer Jonathan Martin. No relation. David, I want to start with you. Just tell us what's the latest on what's happening in Yemen.
Basically, what's happened is that the U.S. has stirred up a hornet's nest in Yemen among the al-Qaeda operatives there. The U.S. has had intelligence for about 3 weeks that al-Qaeda in Yemen was planning an attack against the U.S. Embassy in the capital of Sana'a. They thought they had preempted that attack with airstrikes and cruise missile strikes on December 17th and December 24th, but apparently there are still al-Qaeda operatives out there trying to go after the U.S. Embassy. And so that's what's happened now. They've closed the U.S. Embassy and a number of other Western embassies, you mentioned the Japanese embassy as well, are closed, hunkered down, trying to wait until either the U.S. or the Yemenis can eliminate this threat. Now, the Yemenis are saying they have killed 2 of the bombers who were en route to carry out these attacks. I suppose the confirmation of that will be whether or not the embassies reopen.
David, how big is the hornet's nest here in terms of just how big of a problem this is?
Well, it's hundreds of operatives. What happened is as the U.S. Started putting pressure on the sanctuaries in Pakistan with the CIA drone missile strikes, a lot of the operatives in Pakistan started moving into Yemen. So now there are anywhere from 200 to 300 so-called operatives working for al-Qaeda in Yemen. And Yemen is largely outside the capital an ungoverned country, and until these strikes in December, they really had free run of the country.
Jonathan Martin, I want to turn to you about the politics here. When the president first responded to the plane bomber, there were some people in the administration who were saying this was a deliberately anti-Bush approach, not to sort of play it low-key in public while things were going on behind the scenes. Do Democrats see that as a mistake now that we're a few days away from it?
I think you did hear some grumbling, most of it expressed privately, of course, John, that the president's reaction was not as quick and perhaps not as emphatic as perhaps some in the party would have liked. This is a party that is still concerned about the politics of national security. They do not want to be tagged by the Republicans as weak on this issue, as they were, of course, during the Bush years so many times. But the president is sort of trying to reconcile his Goldilocks challenge, if you will. Not too hot, not too cold. He's trying to get it just right. He does not want to inflame these kind of news stories by rushing to the podium to denounce these kind of attacks, but at the same time, he does want to project on the image of being on the job in protecting the American people. And I think this was his first real national security challenge, and he's still grappling with exactly what is the right approach.
And what's your sense of what Republicans are likely to do? We are now in an election year, and we, of course, have this whole cast of characters out there running for the presidency in 2012.
Yeah.
What's your sense of how much they'll make of this and how effective it'll be?
Well, I think you're going to see different Republicans take a different approach. I mean, there are some who I think will be more delicate about going after this president on national security. But let's be honest, though, if you're in a Republican primary in a red-leaning district or state, there's little downside, politically at least, in taking after this president. You saw Pete Hoekstra, the ranking member of the House Intel Committee, who, not incidentally, running for governor of Michigan, trying to raise money off of the president's response and his own reaction to it. So I think this primary season, John, we're going to see plenty of that.
David Martin, back to you. Against that backdrop of politics, there is this claim, well, the president was slow to move, which is about the theatrics. Give me your assessment on how much Yemen was on the radar screen of the administration and of the Pentagon before we ever heard about the Detroit bomber.
The Yemen came on the radar screen in the spring as these reports of operatives moving from Pakistan into Yemen began to mount. And at that time, they started building up their intelligence capabilities, sending in special forces to begin training some of the Yemeni units. So they've been They've been working on this for several months, and they've taken action that was stronger than anything that happened during the Bush administration in Yemen. The Bush administration conducted a Predator drone strike on one of the bombers of the Cole in 2002, but there was nothing on the magnitude of what the Obama administration has done in Yemen.
And David, is there a delicate dance here, though? Let's say the president decided, as previous presidents have, to come out and talk about this, the relationship with the Yemeni government and how much the U.S. is doing to kind of push back against this idea that they've been asleep at the switch. That I could see would create some tensions with the government in Yemen. How does that relationship work?
Well, right now, Yemen has given the U.S. a green light to conduct these strikes, but I think part of the deal is that the U.S. won't talk about them and will give all the credit to the Yemeni government. So if the U.S. Gets out and starts talking about them, then the whole deal under which they're going after al-Qaeda in Yemen might fall apart. And I think that is the primary reason for the silence. And I got to tell you, it's not just the silence of the president. It is very hard to get information on these strikes from anybody.
Jonathan Martin, let me ask you about Democrats running in 2010. As David Martin pointed out yesterday on Face the Nation, this president has sent a whole lot of troops into Afghanistan. Right. He's got this relationship going on in Yemen, on the case there. There is an argument to be made by Democrats that this president has been a warlike president. Right. Is that one that Democrats can make when, in certain districts, the progressives don't like that argument?
Well, John, you're exactly right in your last comment. It depends where those candidates are running. Look, if you are an Ike Skelton, who's the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, running in rural Missouri, then what you just said is exactly the kind of thing that a Democrat would want to say to push back against the notion that this president is weak on foreign policy, that we're proactively going after terrorists in Yemen, that we're surging in Afghanistan. But if you're coming from a Bay Area or a Seattle kind of district, then of course not, that you're going to try and run from those issues. And I think you're seeing that right now play out, for example, in the special election to fill Ted Kennedy's seat. The Democrat up there, a loyal Obama supporter, obviously, parts ways with this president when it comes to Afghanistan.
And finally, quickly, Jonathan, when we get to election time, barring, of course, any attack or surprise event, is it your sense that this will be a big deal in races, or that other issues will be primary? Well,
John, the caveat that you mentioned is key. Barring no further attacks, no further incident. If that's the case, then I think we're going to get back to the more expected sort of matrix of issues: taxes, health care, spending, the economy chiefly, and the level of unemployment in the country. But again, if we have another attack or this kind of an incident, it's once again front and center.
Okay, Jonathan Martin, thank you. David Martin from the Pentagon, thanks both of you very much. And thanks for watching Washington Unplugged, and let us be the last to wish you a Happy New Year. Join us again tomorrow on CBSNews.com. I'm John Dickerson.